All right, Shalom.
Shalom.
All right, first and foremost, we have to give all the praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh,
Yahweh, Ba'ashem,
Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai,
Yahushua,
Ba'ashem,
Ba'ashem,
Rakah Kadash.
Rekah.
All right, double honors and respect to our apostles and elders, a great millstone, who rule well and taught us this truth. Peace and
Shalom.
salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect in 1/3, your brother Salah.
Brother Zanah.
All right, and in today's video lesson, we gonna be going over in the video. Oh, it's titled "The Hard Reality America's Too Delusional to Admit," and basically, right, it's the West, man. Mainly Babylon the Great, aka America, as fallen, right. They've fallen behind in their technology advancements. They spend too much on their warfare or the military or their quote unquote defense budget. That money is also being sent to Israel. Amalek or the chief house of Esau, man, and basically, man, it's leaving these people assed out, man. Man, the rest of the Babylonians, these so-called Americans, or specifically, you white or Edomite Americans, they ain't getting a slice of the pie anymore, and they're starting to realize, man, that the American dream is becoming the American nightmare, because now, man, they're starting to pay a lot of money, like the prices of goods have gone up. People can't afford housing, man, and we're basically at the end, right, and you see Caesar Duro, aka DJ Trump, passing all this legislation that's making it hard, for Americans to live, right, and ultimately that's building up to the MOTB. So we're gonna open up with the Book of Revelation, chapter 18, starting at verse 1. And it says here, "After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and it's become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunken of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies." Right? Right, and a lot of these countries, right, as you see, man, the countries like Moab, for instance, with them being able to to mass produce, and sell their products to America for cheap. They've gotten very rich off of Babylon, man. As well as the Middle East, like the UAE, Dubai, um, I'm trying to think of other countries, but yeah, man, yeah, these other, these other nations, they've gotten rich, right, and basically, right, the Lord, allowed allowed Moab to, right, to advance, to advance in their technologies, greater than America, right? Because ultimately, right, the Lord, along with other countries, such as Russia, and and um and Iran, He's using these countries, to help take down Babylon the Great, right? Right. So without any further ado, we're gonna play this video. But before we do, we're gonna read the copyright disclaimer. So it says here, disclaimer, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use, for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. So with that, we're gonna play the video. All right.
For any one power to dominate the world. It's the wrong mindset. In my lifetime, just in my career, peaceful rise has already happened. It's a fact on the ground. We went from a poor agrarian country to a behemoth.
I'm gonna speed this up a little bit. So let's see here. Yeah, right here.
That that is China today. Behemoth in every respect. Okay? Yet No country has been invaded. Not a single shot fired. No violence. And if you look at human history, the rise of every power, from Athenian Empire to the Roman Empire to the British Empire to America's manifest, every single one of them, their rise was accompanied by tremendous bloodshed, colonization, wars, massacres. Okay? And China's rise to date has been bigger and faster than them all.
There is a theory that I
All right, so we're gonna pause there and we grab a couple of precepts. Now you heard this Moabite say, like, you know, he mentioned empires like the Athenian. He didn't say Greece. He said the Athenian Empire because during that time, when during Alexander's reign, right, he was controlling that part of Greece. And which is a part of what's it called, of Edomite rulership, man. You know, those Edomites were controlling that part of Greece. He said Greece, and then he said Rome, and then he said the British Empire, and now he said the America. You know, which we know is Babylon the Great. So we got a couple of precepts, and all right, this is the book of Micah, chapter 2, verse 2, and it says here, they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. So wherever Esau, Edom went, the so-called white people. Again, obviously not every white person, but the ones that descend from the line of Esau, man, they went around, they conquered, took over lands, and then took over their cultures, right, and then adapted their cultures to them to make it look like they were the ones who originated that, as you heard the term culture vultures, and that's what these Edomites are, man. They took everyone's lands, they took everyone's heritage, and then they pretend to be those people, to hide who they really are, man, which are the Edomites. And why do these people do that? Well, let's read the book of Genesis. This is the book of Genesis, chapter 27, starting at verse 40, and it says here. Well, let's get let's get 38. All right, this is Genesis chapter 27, starting at verse 38, and it says here, and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me even also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and it shall and shalt serve thy brother, and shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherein his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand, and then will I say my brother Jacob. And these words Esau of Esau her elder son were told to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob her younger son, and said unto him, behold, thy brother Esau is touching thee, and does comfort himself, proposing to kill thee, right? Right, and during that time, man, Jacob had to flee because Esau, was heated, man. Man, that he got the blessing, or the birthright, but again, it wasn't ordained to him to have that birthright, man. That birthright was meant for Jacob,
Huh.
and that's why you see today, man, like Esau's always constantly at war, even though he really shouldn't be at war. Why? Because that's how the Lord set Esau up, man. Man, is to rule in wickedness, man, and seeing all this violence and bloodshed, right? Right, and now we're seeing the end of his empire, right? We're seeing the precipice, or the expiration date of of Esau's hegemony about to end, right? And then that's why you also see Moab rising. Not that Moab's gonna take over, no, but like the Lord's allowing Moab to to rise, and get his lick back a little bit, because he's using Moab along with Russia and Iran, to help take down Babylon the Great, right? Right. So we got another precept. Thou hast appointed bounds that he cannot. All right, Job 14 verse 5 says here, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed bounds that he cannot pass, and now we're reaching at the end of Esau's bounds, right? Or these other nations, right? They're starting to rise up, man, and eventually, they're gonna overtake Esau, man. But that's not until that's not until Jacob's trouble happens. The mandatory issue of the RFID microchip, man, the MOTB, and then eventually, man, the nukes are gonna be sent flying from across the world, hitting Babylon the Great. That's going to happen during these times. Let's get that precept a little later. We're gonna go back to the video.
I think is true. And that theory is that violence and warmongering is no longer the way to become the global superpower. And it's no longer the way to maintain your dominance when you get there. In fact, dominance is no longer the way to even think about your positioning in the world. And I go further to say that any nation that has not figured this out and made a fundamental change in its approach to global relations is destined to be blockbuster video in a Netflix era. In this video, I'm going to attempt to prove this point, and I'm going to explain what this means for everyone on the globe. And I'm going to put a particular focus on what this means for the continent of Africa. Why? Because my name is TJ, I'm Nigerian and British mixed, and on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics.
The emergence of, let's be frank, and all respect to China, a great civilization, but this is a single party state. And it's taking us, if this is the power that generates or dominates the 21st century, it's an unfamiliar world. I do not think China will be the new empire, but the idea that the world is led by a single party state causes anxiety. And in a post-imperial world is wonderful because we get back to self-determination, in my view. We get back to the nation state as the driver of politics. But we're suddenly in a world without the hegemon that used to have an association of democratic values, and now we're into a new world. I think that produces a great deal of anxiety.
So here the speaker is explaining his reservations and concerns with the one-party policy. What is underlying this is that China has always spoken about in terms of being a communist party, being an authoritarian party. And it has some of those elements. A lot of times, America uses this to create an adversarial situation because America is caught up in a zero-sum game. Winner takes all. And the winner takes all mentality is linked very closely to the warmongering rise in order to get top global position. When you are caught up in this mentality, you think that everyone else functions like that, even though I believe the landscape has changed. So let's carefully listen to the Chinese response to this positioning.
And let me also help, if I could, relieve your anxiety a little bit, as you earlier pointed out about the potential for Chinese dominance of the world. Let me say this, I will wager a bet today that in 25 years when we return for the 50th anniversary of the Nexus conference, that
you're very welcome.
that China will not be dominating the world at that time. And I'll wager that bet for two reasons. One is because I don't believe China intends to dominate the world. And number two is even if they did, they would fail at it. Because we've moved way past beyond the age of dominance. I think it'll be difficult for any one power to dominate the world. It's the wrong mindset. In my lifetime, just in my career, peaceful rise has already happened. It's a fact on the ground. We went from, since I started my career in business, we went from a poor agrarian country to a behemoth that you know that is China today. Behemoth in every respect, okay? Yet, no country has been invaded, not a single shot fired, no violence. And if you look at human history, the rise of every power, from Athenian Empire to the Roman Empire, to the British Empire, to America's manifest destiny, to the rise of modern Germany and modern Japan, Ottoman Empire, every single one of them, their rise was accompanied by tremendous bloodshed, colonization, wars, massacres, okay? And China's rise to date has been bigger and faster than them all.
Now, you have to think about this and realize that this is true. While China does have considerable military might, nuclear capabilities, it has not fired any shots. It has not invaded anybody with troops. It does not have military bases around the world. Well, maybe you could count Djibouti's naval base, but put that up against America's 750 military bases around the world, it is not the same thing whatsoever. Donald Trump recently has been talking about going from aid to trade when it comes to dealing with Africa, for example. I think China made the switch from war to trade. And the last 100 years have shown this to be a more effective strategy than anything the world has ever seen before.
All right, so we're gonna stop there. We're gonna bring some precepts out concerning Moab. Let's see here. All right, let's get this. All right, so the book of Psalms, chapter 60, verse 8, and says, Moab is my washpot. Over Edom will I cast out my shoe. Philistia triumphed thou because of me. So basically, right, as you heard that Moabite say, they had no plans or intentions, to take over the world because the Lord Yahweh Shem, so he didn't put the spirit on Moab to do so, man. Man, he did put the spirit on them, to have all these technological advancements, through trade and commerce and all that stuff, right? All right, and what's that's doing, that's hurting Esau's economy, right? Because right now they're with them being able, to sell their products, like rare earth minerals, refining them, for their microprocessors or whatever, and other technologies, such as their smart cars, their high speed railways, and then being able to do global trade, such as them, being able to trade, with the continent of Africa, man, that helped them, with their rise, their power, as far as their technological advancement goes, and their military might, right. Right, and eventually, man, the Lord's gonna purpose these people to what's it called? Turn on America. Once they implement that, once America crashes the dollar and implements that RFID microchip, right? Which China also has their own version of the microchip. Yeah, but eventually, right? Once they start mass chipping people, then that's when the Lord's is gonna put the spirit on China and these other nations, to nuke America, right? Now it says, Philistia triumphed thou because of me, right? Let's let's take a look at that. Yeah. All right, let's go to the Strongs. Let's go to Philistia.
Strong's H 6429. Pelesheth.
Pelestith. Philistia, land of sojourners, generally the territory west coast of Canaan, or the entire country of Palestine. All right, so I believe in this context, it is actually talking about them Hamites, right? Right, and let's see, and and I could be wrong, but yeah, man, but even the Hamites, right? They started to get a little bit of something from from Moab, because because the Lord is allowing Moab to to rise, which is ultimately gonna take down Babylon. But guess what, that Moabite, when he said, like, no one nation's gonna rule the world. Well, that's wrong, man. Right, because we know what the scripture says, right? All right, let's see what it says. And the saints All right, this is the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 18. It says here, "And the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever." So yeah, there will be one nation, one kingdom, one hegemony ruling over the earth, man. And that's the kingdom of Yasharallah, Israel, man. The true Israelites, the 12 tribes, right? Consisting mainly of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, right? Right. Starting with the elect of Israel, right? Starting with Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe, right, and and then the rest of Israel, right, these are gonna be the new rulers, once Yahushai comes down, to gather his elect, right, so, right, right, so you Moabites, man, you other nations, right. Right, you're not gonna take over once Esau goes down. All right, let's get the book of let's get the book of Second Ezra, chapter 16. It says here, woe be unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Woe be unto thee, Egypt and Syria. Gird yourselves up with cloths of sack and hair. Bewail your children and be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. A sword is sent upon you, and who may turn it back? A fire is sent among you, who may quench it? Plagues are sent unto you, and what is he that may drive them away? May a man drive away a hungry lion in the wood, or may any one quench the fire and stubble when it begin to burn? May one turn again the arrow that is shot of a strong archer. That's talking about them ICBM nuclear missiles, right? Right, the mighty Lord Yahweh Bashim Yashai sendeth the plagues, and who is he that can drive them away? A fire shall go forth from its wrath, and who is he that may quench it? Right. So man, World War III is coming. Whether these people like it or not, man. And we in them talks of peace and safety, right? But we know that sudden destruction is going to be at hand, because why? Caesar Nero signed them legislations, right? You just saw him pass, that the big beautiful bill. You saw him pass the Genius Act, and now you saw him pass, that American Defense Act, or whatever, man. Jacob's trouble's coming, man, next year.
Share the same admiration we have for the rise of China. I really share it. I've been there every year since the 80s, and it's amazing. But you said rightly that the past history of empires has been an history of aggression and supremacy and hegemony. So those of us who like to study history and political science and so on, say, now the rise of China, why would it be different? That's why I came back to my point. It's so important that we work together for a world based on rules. Also, it's in our fundamental interest for mankind that we have China committed, and now China says that it's committed, and President Xi Jinping has made a very clear commitment about that in the United Nations. Even in Davos, he came to Davos, made that point. So the question is, the history shows to us that empires tend to be assertive, sometimes / aggressive. Okay, now you say to me, and I'm sure that you are sincere, that China will be different. But we have to be sure that we have a sufficient global order that can prevent us from more accidents in the future.
So this gentleman, even when given the evidence that, hey, look at the last 50 years, look at how China has risen to be a behemoth, he still is saying, hey, you guys could still do war. I think this highlights further the mentality of the West, is that right now, they cannot even conceive the idea of this concept, even though it's been given to them. Look what we've done it already. We're not talking about something we're going to do. This creates an interesting situation. It means that China is not going to demilitarize. It's not going to lay down its arms. It's going to have to develop its military. And then that will be used for the likes of America to say, look, they're into war, without the United States understanding that the landscape has changed and that they may need to put the mirror on themselves and say, look, of course these guys are going to militarize. We are the biggest military in the world. We are the world's bully. We've got 750 military bases around the world. We've got a history of warmongering. I mean, they just sent rockets to Iran a couple of weeks ago. Where are the Chinese rockets? Where are the Chinese invasions? Where are the Chinese covert operations? Well, China just doesn't move like that. Of course, every nation needs to have some defense because they're not just going to lay down just in case these warmongering groups decide they want to take advantage of us. So with all of that backdrop, we now have the emergence of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is making all these kinds of moves to counteract the dominance of China. And he's begun the tariff war. He recognizes that China has put itself in a position where the world is basically reliant on the manufacturing capabilities of China. This is highly troubling for the American state that is of the war paradigm. And because America is no longer functioning in the correct posture for the new landscape that is not warmongering, as well as other factors, the United States has begun its decline. So the counteraction to this, aside from more war, Israel, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Middle East, etc., the idea is to rebuild the manufacturing, build back better.
If
Yeah. Before I let this Mobile speak, yes. China is not going to demilitarize because the Lord is planning to is in fact planning to use China's military to go to war with with America and Israel, man. As the scripture says, the least of the flock shall draw them out, right? Right, they're not going to be demilitarized. In fact, they're going to up their military ante. To prepare them, to prepare their nukes to destroy Babylon the Great, man. As we just read.
President Trump is serious about recreating manufacturing jobs in the United States, he needs to do several things. He needs to build up connectivity, build up container ports, build up high-speed railway, build up inner river transportation, and he needs to increase power generation like crazy. He needs to at least double the power capacity in the United States. He needs to train the American people. He needs to instill this discipline and work ethics which will enable the great people in the United States to work in factories which need to be competitive, which need to have the marketability not only in the US market but in the global market. Now, I'm afraid in the United States today, they lack almost all of this. And you think tariff will really force manufacturing jobs back to the United States?
Now,
All right, so we're gonna stop there, man. So yeah, brother. So what was that one precept the always brought out? We would have healed Babylon. Yeah, and as you just heard, that's one of the many reasons why Trump is establishing those tariffs is because he sees that. Because he sees that China is becoming a superpower, which is a threat to Edomite supremacy, right? Right, but ultimately, right, that is going to end up destroying America, which is actually what these elites want, so they can roll out the MOTB, right?
Wow.
We would have. All right, this is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 51, verse 9. It says here, "We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her. Let's go, everyone into his own country, for judgment reaches unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies." Right, man. So that third woe is coming, right? Right. World War III is inevitable. So. The third woe. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 4, starting at verse 14. It says here, "The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were a great voice in heaven saying, The kingdoms of the world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Hamashiach, and we shall reign forever and ever." Right? And that basically goes to show you, man, that the kingdom of heaven is going to rule forever and ever, not these other nations, right? Or not not one single nation is going to rule the world. No, Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, man, and the kingdom of heaven and is going to rule on earth, man. Starting with the Israelites, man, the 144,000 under the rule of Yahweh Shai. All right, verse 16. and the 420 elders which sat before Yahweh in their seats and fell upon their face and worship Yahweh, saying, "We give thanks, O Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shai Almighty, which art and was and art to come, because thou hast taken the thy great power and hast reigned, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and thou shouldst give award unto thy servants the prophets, and unto the saints, and unto them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldst destroy what that and shouldst destroy them which destroyed the earth, man." And that's these Edomites, man. These motherfuckers about to get destroyed. And the temple of Yahweh was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and earthquakes and great hail, man. And you see all this stuff happening on earth, man. So get ready. So get ready, man. That world war, that third world is about to come, man. That RFID microchip, man. Jake. Repent, man. Don't take it.
Because America didn't understand that we are in a new paradigm of trade and connectivity, they do not have what is required to maintain their global dominance in this era. And everything in that video highlights it with crystal clear clarity. China just carries on plodding away, keeps developing things, building things. And yes, it develops all kinds of capabilities. And some of these capabilities can have dual purpose. They can be for war, but they can also be for trade.
China just unveiled the world's fastest engine, which can travel 16 times the speed of sound, which is faster than the world's quickest hypersonic missiles. Today, China said, quote, "For decades, Concorde pushed the boundaries of speed, but our latest development brings hypersonic flight close to reality." Now, what makes this such a big deal is that it's an engine which has been made to do this, which means it can be fitted to almost anything: fighter jets, passenger planes, and even missiles. And China says this engine can make things travel 16 times the speed of sound, which means it could travel around the entire world in just 2 hours, which is the same speed that satellites in space travel at. Now, the reason this engine can travel so fast is because China has re-engineered the way it uses fuel, and they've made it far more efficient and far more powerful for less fuel. And something else important to note, China said this engine could be fitted to cargo planes, and they would be able to reduce global delivery times from weeks down to literally hours. And obviously that would be worth a huge amount of money for China. But as I said, China also said this could be fitted onto fighter jets. In fact, China spoke on this. China said if fighter jets were travelling this fast, then they wouldn't even be able to be detected by radar. And modern air defense systems wouldn't even stand a chance at shooting them down. And considering not a single country in the West has publicly even created a hypersonic missile yet, it's really quite a big deal, because it would suggest that China is far more in the future than the West is.
If this is what they're announcing publicly, who knows what they're keeping behind quietly? And if America decides that China is a military threat and does ever decide it wants a direct conflict with China, it must be acknowledged that China will be a considerable and formidable foe.
I'm probably a lot less worried than most people in the room about the possibility of a confrontation between the United States and China, simply because the industrial prowess which China has shown in EVs can also do things like mass manufacture cruise missiles. Chinese have produced videos showing plants that produce 1,000 cruise missile motors a day. And we know from the Pentagon estimates they have several thousand satellite-guided long-range or medium-range, that's 1,000 miles or more, surface-to-ship missiles, which means that anything sitting on the surface of the ocean is basically a sitting duck now. And they have an arbitrarily large number of cruise missiles, and they've got a home court advantage. A destroyer can easily intercept cruise missiles, but it can carry about 100 interceptors in its hold. The Chinese can shoot 100 cruise missiles at any arbitrary ship they want. So I think the Pentagon knows very well that we're outgunned in the home theater of China, and they're not going to want to get into a conversation of any kind.
So maybe...
All right, and that takes you to another precept. As thou become as weak as... All right, this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 10, and it says here. Well, actually, let's get this in the blue letters, so we can get better context. All right, Israel's taunt. Let's see. All right, so this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 4, 144, called Law Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, that thou hast that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, How is the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased? The Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath, and with the continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest, and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yeah, the fir trees rejoice at thee in the cedars of Lebanon, saying, Since thou art laid down, no fellows are come up against us. And that's right, man. These even these trees are going to rejoice, man. Once Esau Edom gets taken down, ultimately, man. After this third world war, when Yahushua comes down with the elect, hell from beneath thee is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stir up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from the thrones all the kings of the nations. And all right, and here's the main point: all they that speak shall say unto thee, Art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like it unto us? Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and thy noise of thy vows. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee, and that represents decay.
Okay.
Right, and you heard that Edomite man. He said, man, Moab, the China man has basically outgunned Babylon the Great America. Right now again, Babylon might have something up their sleeve, but guess what? Ultimately, this place is gonna collapse, man. And this this is just one of the people saying, hey man, America doesn't have anything to counter what China has, what Moab has in stock, right? So this place is ultimately through, man. And if you want to keep reading further, right on verse 11 is Salakia, and in verse 12 it says here, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut to the ground, which this weakest the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, Salakia, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will also sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall never look upon thee and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake his kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners, all the kings of the nations, even all of them lie in glory, everyone in his own house. And yeah, man, the apostles and elders at Great Millstone, man, they've been saying this for years, man. Lucifer, man, is Esau Edom, and Lucifer just means light bearer. The enlightened ones. Speaking of the wicked elites, that they're Illuminati, or the ones that have that left-handed knowledge. They're light. Right, and now we're seeing the fall of these wicked elites, right? They're not able to catch up technologically, so they got to pull a fast one, which is what crashed the economy, right? And then roll out that MOTB so they can try to regain control back of the world, right? And we're seeing this all play out in real time, man. And Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, man, he's moving fast. All right. So you Israelites out there, that hear this word, man, repent, man. Man, repent daily, turn back from your wickedness, because the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, man, he's almost here.
Some people out there will not believe it, but there are people like this saying that, hey, you can't even fight China. The war is already won. They have outgunned us. It will be an unsuccessful and futile mission if the United States actually wanted to go to war. If America know this, that means it's very unlikely that they will go to war. And what does that mean for China? More trade and more global dominance in the era of connectivity and trade. The other thing, of course, that the United States doubled down on over the last 20 years or so is the enforcing of its ideological standards. And one of the ways that has manifested is in the environmental space. It imposed this on its citizens heavily, and it tried to impose this on the rest of the world. And so this video demonstrates this difference very clearly.
Oh my God, guys, look, all the efforts, they're working. We're saving the planet. Getting rid of the plastic straws. Look at what we did. Oh. Yeah.
China! China and the global south just carried on with its CO2 emissions, factories, building and manufacturing. And this is contributed massively to the stifling of the ability for the West to compete with its manufacturing. And we have seen a sharp polarization on the political scale. You have the Republicans versus the Democrats, and this is beginning to tear the country apart. As the country declines, people start looking for things to blame, they start arguing with each other, and they stop being able to have coherent and quality dialogue with each other in order to really take a look at the issues and fix them. What does this have the effect of doing? It has the effect of producing a leader like Donald Trump. Now, what I was hoping was that although being brash and being rude and not speaking in a politically correct manner, I was hoping Donald Trump was going to be a course corrector, meaning he did not work for the machine that is the United States, one of which is warmongering, one of which decides they're going to back Israel no matter what Israel does, one that is going to focus on trade and business. Sadly, I was wrong. And what I think now is that Trump is the manifestation at the peak of the problem that we're discussing here, that America has fallen victim to being a warmongering empire that rose to the top, but is now antiquated for the new paradigm that is connectivity and trade. And as the nation understands that things are going downhill, that the cost of living is getting out of control, desperate times call for desperate measures, and a savior emerges as the medicine to this illness. But unfortunately, Donald Trump is the wrong antidote. The medicine should be humility. The medicine should be critical analysis. The medicine should be connectivity and trade. The medicine should see, okay, this is what China has done to put itself in the position of dominance that it has risen to. Let us see if we need to change any of our actions. But no, they don't. They continue with their global banking agenda. They continue with their warmongering. And Donald Trump himself makes this worse. He doubles down on the problems and he begins the wrong kind of war, a trade war.
Another escalation in the trade war between China and America. China is now stating that if America doesn't stop, they will dump their mortgage-backed securities that they own. These are United States mortgage-backed securities. So if China dumps these, it will cause a housing crash in the United States. And China is again showing they have all the leverage, and they have all the leverage because America made it possible. Because American politicians sold out American citizens to China for decades. They just kept going there and borrowing money and kept becoming indebted to China. And now this is the result. So strap in. We will see what happens. But I don't think this is going to get better unless America starts to compromise.
Now, this is a war that we're talking about. Now that is a war of a different kind. It's not a war fought with guns and violence. It's a war fought with trade. And when you produce everything, you have the advantage.
China's about to go nuclear on American intellectual property, and they are not messing around. So intellectual property rights on American design products is really key to allowing America to sell premium products globally. So think iPhone, think Dyson vacuum cleaners, think Microsoft Word. So until recently, China has actually put in restrictions on copying of American goods, mostly to meet international trade regulation. But a couple of days ago at the China State Council meeting, they basically said, we don't care anymore. If you put in tariffs on us, we are just going to open the doors for IP infringement. We're going to copy everything that American businesses create, and we're just going to sell it at like 5 cents onto the dollar. Essentially saying that we're going to undercut all of your products. And because China has the manufacturing capacity to do this, they can build American products, American design products at scale.
So now what we're seeing is the secondary and tertiary effects of tariff wars. And I don't think the outcomes are going to do well for the United States overall. This problem also extends to agriculture.
Over the weekend, China decided that they didn't care about the fact that Trump canceled the tariffs on computers, smartphones, and toys, and decided to cancel their imports of U.S. beef. And these are targeted red state attacks on our agriculture industries that are very strategically done. It's over $2.5 billion of beef exports. And despite the fact that Republicans have stated over and over again over the course of the past week that China needs us more than we need them, they went ahead and replaced us with Australian beef. Now, which state has the most number of beef exports in our country, you might be asking? The answer would be Nebraska, which, if you recall, said a couple weeks ago that they have a $4 million budget shortfall. The cancellation of beef comes immediately after China already canceled soybean imports from the United States, which directly impacts the state of Indiana. Indiana exports approximately $2.6 billion worth of soybeans, and 60% of them go to China. China replaced us with Brazil.
The global south is now trading amongst itself, and it's turning away from the United States, not just because China is offering better deals, but it can't work in the same way with America when we have the tariffs. On one end, China is creating higher value in order to boost trade, and on the other end, America is creating a more difficult business environment for Africa and the global south to trade with it. I made a video a few weeks ago about how China has made 0 tariffs for 53 of the 54 African nations on the continent. What Trump's tariffs don't take into account is the extent by which tariffs can change between countries that America doesn't have any control over. This is creating new incentives, new connectivity, and more trade. Now, to double click on the relationship between China and Africa, the United States don't build anything in Africa. They just bring ideology and they bring the market. You have to trade with us. You need us. And China is counteracting the market side, but it's also building infrastructure.
Check out what China's high-speed rail network looked like in 2008 and what it looks like now. They have the largest high-speed rail network, more than the rest of the world combined. You can use China's high-speed rail to get from Beijing to Shanghai in just 4 hours. That's 800 miles, which is like going from New York to Chicago. They even have high-speed trains that don't have a driver. And not surprisingly, most of the world's fastest high-speed trains are in China. Check out this video of a Chinese high-speed rail train outpacing a regular train. So why do they have so many? Well, they build them very fast. They were able to build a high-speed rail train station in just 9 hours. Meanwhile, it takes the United States over 3 years to just upgrade a train station.
Now, instead of making wars and spending on the military, United States could have been developing its high-speed rail system, but it didn't. This is why it's important to note that this problem that America is experiencing now is not a Trump problem. China has spent the last 20 years building its infrastructure. What has America built? And at the same time, China is doing that not only in its own country, but in other countries. This here is a map of the infrastructure plans for rail that China is trying to roll out in the continent of Africa. They are trying to connect cross-border business centers and cities across the entire continent of Africa. Who's going to benefit from this? Where do you think Africa's allegiances will lie when they bring projects like this? We've seen airports, rail, bridges, roads, factories, expertise, manufacturing, all brought into the continent of Africa, courtesy of China. And yes, some people say this is a new type of colonialism. It's infrastructure with debt that if a country defaults, they will be in big trouble. But countries have been using the Western version.
Oh, now I want to come real quick, like yeah, and it's funny he says if they default they're gonna owe debt. Well, that's exactly what Israel's gonna do, man. They're going to default on their money, right? And then it's gonna force everyone, well, to owe that money, which is how they're gonna implement their MOTB, right? Like once they default, they're gonna be like, okay, everyone has to take this RFID microchip, so they don't have to like owe money again, which is how they're gonna gain global dominance, right? Right, and if I remember correctly, the apostles and elders, man, they spoke about this, when Joseph went to Egypt, and when their money became useless. Or when there was a famine in Egypt. Let me see if I can find that.
Let me try to find a pizza. You said it was a famine in Egypt?
Yeah, it was a famine in Egypt, right? Right. It was in Genesis. Let's see if I can find it.
I got you. I think I found it. Go to, let me see. I believe it's Genesis 13:2. And Abraham was very rich in cattle and silver. And no, not that one. Not that
It
one.
wasn't that one. It was when Joseph went to Egypt.
I found it. Genesis 47:15 through 17. It says, you want me to read it or you got it?
Hold on. Let me guess so people can see it. You said 47:15.
I believe it's Genesis 47 verse 15, and we're gonna read to 17.
All right. Go ahead, Doc. I have it right now.
It says, and when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence, for the money faileth? So
Yeah, that's right, man. So what happened is what happened in Egypt is their money defaulted, right? And so inflation hit.
nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, nothing new under the sun. Like, so when there was a famine, their money basically defaulted, right? So they couldn't afford to buy anything. And as you see throughout history, like during the Great Depression, during before World War II, when Germany's economy is bad, man, like what happened, like their money defaulted and they became in debt, right? And that's what these Amalekites are trying to do, right? The Amalekites know, and they learn this from the Egyptians, right? When they default, when these people like aren't default on their money, right? They're basically in debt into them, and that's how they put them into slavery, right? And that's what they're trying to do with their MOTV, right? Right, and the idea of the MOTV is anything new. It goes back to the Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel, it wasn't just literally a tower, right? It was them trying to rule everyone. It was them trying to rule everyone under under one banner, like getting all the nations to be ruled over in wickedness, basically, right? And that's what they're trying to do now, right? They're trying to get They're trying to get that godlike power or that godlike capability. Now with their tech, right? Because now with their tech, they're able to have that surveillance. Everyone uses that microchip. They're able to have that surveillance underneath people's skin. Going back to going back to going back to Isaiah 14, right, where it says he'll be like the Most High. But but ultimately, right, the Lord's bringing them up, for one last time to ultimately, tear them the fuck down, right, and to lead them as an example, of what not to do. So all this, man, is for the Lord's purpose, right? He what he did before, he's doing right now, man. As the scripture says, the Lord requires, the things to come to pass, and let's get that. The Lord require that which is the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 15. It says here, that which hath been is now, and that which hath already been, and Yahweh required that which is past, right? So basically nothing new under the sun, man. And the old saying, history repeats itself. Well, there's a reason for it. It's because the Lord requires it to come again, to ultimately fulfill prophecy, to fulfill His will, right? Right. So we're gonna finish off this video, and then we're gonna end off with one more precept,
which is the no infrastructure banking IMF World Bank debt system, which has resulted in many defaults and many problems. You don't hear very much of that.
Yeah, and you just heard the banking IMF system, right? And that's basically how Esau is gonna roll out the MOTV, right? He's gonna use the IMF, the default on everyone's debt. That's why America racked up with such a huge debt, right? And it's not just America; it's America, Europe, China, and all these other countries, right? That deal with these Amalekites. Hence why Amalek is the first of the nations, is because everyone goes through his global banking system, right?
The IMF and the World Bank for giving debts. Meanwhile, China doesn't really have many defaults on the continent of Africa. I really only know of one, which I think is Zambia. They also control all of the major deep sea ports around the continent of Africa and many more around the world, something that America has very little control over. So this has improved the connectivity, the logistics, the relationships that China has.
Check this out. In 2003, countries in Africa mostly traded with the United States, but now they all mostly trade with China. 52 out of 54 countries. The only two that still trade with the United States more are Lesotho and Eswatini. So what happened? In 2013, China launched the Belt and Road Initiative to help build up trade routes and infrastructure in Africa. Look how many Chinese ports are in Africa now. China just buys what Africa sells, which is raw materials. Some examples include copper from Zambia, cobalt from DNC, and oil from Angola. All these raw materials fuel China's factory and allows them to build more electronics and batteries. The United States wants mostly finished goods, which a lot of countries in Africa don't produce. The US also shifted its focus away from Africa over the last 20 years and got really caught up with the Middle East. And now pretty much all of Africa is indebted to China too. China built a railway connecting Kenya's port city to the capital for $3.6 billion, and 90% of it's financed through China's Exim Bank. China built the largest suspension bridge in Africa, which was also financed, and a $2 billion copper mine in Botswana. China's relationship with Africa is very strategic, and it's getting stronger each year. And now they trade 4 times more with Africa than the United States.
This video highlights the problem that Africa has in that it is not producing end product stuff. And that's what really Africa has to work on. But that's maybe a topic for a different day. If Africa is going to improve itself and raise its people's living standards, who do you think it's going to partner with based off everything we discussed so far? In the next 50, 100 years, not only are we going to compare the war paradigm to the connectivity and trade paradigm, that is what I believe is in the current zeitgeist, but we're going to see that the uplifting of nations creates more wealth for all. It is no longer a zero-sum game, and we should not view the world in that perspective. It divides us.
And we're gonna end off the video there. So yeah. And again, right, the reason why we don't have any of this stuff, the reason why, basically, like, to sum it all up, what China wants and what the people think is going to be good is if we trade with you and if we build up your infrastructure and you trade your goods back, basically I get rich, you get rich, we all get rich, right? Right, but that's not what the Lord wants, man. And that goes back, that pretty much goes back to that Tower of Babel, right.
Um,
Right. So
oh
we
yeah, oh
so
yeah, Salaki. My fault. I had got a crazy message. Salaki.
no,
Satan. Yeah.
no, you got. I thought you had a precept, but I'm gonna get one more precept out, and we're gonna end off this video. And this is the one that you brought up, Brother Sarah. There is no healing of thy bruise.
Oh yeah, Khan. It is grievous.
All right, this is the book of Nahum, chapter 3, verse 19. It says here, "There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wounds is grievous. All that hear the brood of thee shall clap the hands over thee, from upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually." And yeah, man, everyone has experienced the wickedness of this damn devil Esau Edom, right? Right.
Khan.
Which is why they all about to come up against her. So with that, we're gonna end off the video lesson right here. Hope this video was edifying. For you Akim and you feel Akwath. And with that, we like to say, Call Halayim La, Abanawa,
Yeah.
Yahweh,
Yahweh
Bahashem,
Bahashem.
Yahweh Shai,
Bahashem.
Bahashem, Ruka Kadash.
Rekam.
All right, double honors and respect to our apostles and elders, a great millstone, who rule well and taught us this truth. Peace and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect in the 1/3, Brother Salah. All right. And we have Brother Zanai here, and with that, we'll just say Shalom.
Come on.